welcome all to episode 5 of the Cuphead 300% saga. In today's episode we have the charge shot. Now the charge shot is pretty amazing, to be honest, or so I thought. In this video you'll see me point out the many flaws of the charge shot, with some upsides sprinkle in. Don't think it's all bad, so please kick back, relax, and then go down below, like, subscribe to the video, and then you can enjoy. Thanks. To start this challenge, we first need to actually unlock the charge shot without using any other weapons, which means we need to P-rank Forest Follies and Treetop Trouble. And look, I don't want to talk about it, but for some reason Forest Follies gave me some issues trying to P-rank it. But now that we have our weapon of choice, it is time for our first boss. I say this every time, but the root pack is essentially the same every time you fight it. The only difference this time is that it felt longer to get through each of the phases. Like, noticeably long. You see, while the charge shot has the highest damage per bullet in the game, the DPS can be a little bit on the low side just because you have to charge it up each time, which means it's really good for bosses that you don't get a ton of chances to hit, but falls off on bosses that are super easy to hit and you still have to do your charge. It also struggles a little bit taking on the carrots in the final phase, as I would either have to use the uncharged shot to get rid of them and make the phase just go slower, or there would just be so many of them on screen that I would just get hit. Nonetheless, we still win. Ruby and Croak's first phase is made difficult by the same reason that the root pack was hard. All of Croak's little fireflies need to be taken care of, and since I don't have a fast shooting or splash damage weapon, my best option was to use the uncharged form of the charge shot, which shoots slightly faster, but it's also the lowest damage dealing weapon in the game. I found EXs useful here as well, as they have a big splash radius, but I found it hard to line up properly sometimes. Luckily, once we finish that phase, the second and third present zero challenge. Speaking of no challenge, welcome to Goopy Legrand, where literally nothing is different. I mean, just time your shots right in every phase and it's easy. Now it's time for Cagney Carnation. Cagney is a little similar to the other Isle 1 bosses, where she shoots out little projectiles in the form of her seedlings. This gives me two options. One, to just avoid them and let them fly by, or two, I can kill them and have less focus on the boss, making the whole thing take a little bit longer. Either option was good, but if you know me, you know I'm all about getting through it quicker, so I just try and avoid them. Once I get to the final phase, I just keep a distance, mix in some EXs for good measure, and it's nothing. Baroness von Bonbon is next, and luckily, she isn't that bad. All of her minions feel super weak to the charge shot, so as long as I'm careful to not hit any of her jelly beans, they go down with ease. As for actual Baroness, her final phase kinda always gives me trouble, but here, we get to see an upside of the charge shot. Since I don't get a ton of chances to hit Baroness during this phase, whenever I do hit her with the charge, it does a lot of damage, so we take her down on our very first try. Beppy the Clown is next, and for this boss, the charge shot is just outright bad. In the first phase, it isn't that terrible. The worst part is that I couldn't shoot the ducks because they're just a waste of a full charge. In the second phase, things got more difficult because I focused a lot on avoiding the dogs, which did cause me to get hit, but overall, it was pretty quick when I just focused on the boss. The third phase is the only phase that I can say with confidence the charge shot performed well in, because it got melted really quick. Final phase, the focus was all on Beppy, and I would try and take out the baseball kids if I felt I had to, and use EXs whenever I could. Luckily, plain bosses are off the table for this challenge, so Grim Matchstick is next. I think that the charge is an underrated shot for this boss, just because the lobber is miles above every other weapon here, but the charge is a pretty good backup. First phase is easy, with some careful dodging and some EXs, it's nothing special. In the second phase, as always, you listen for the sound cues, and you'll be fine. Third phase always presents a bit of a challenge, as I wanted to be super careful with my charge shot to make sure I didn't hit any of the fireballs that he shoots out, but wasn't too bad. Rumor Honeybottoms is luckily a boss where the charge shot is good. The first phase, the high damage and precision of the charge shot is very nice to get rid of the Officer Bee. Sadly, in the second, any weapon kind of functions the same here. But the third phase is good again, because since you don't really get a lot of opportunities to hit the boss, whenever you do hit it with a charge shot, it really counts with that high damage. Sally's stage play is up, and something you might be noticing is that the Isle 3 bosses are pretty weak to charge, and Sally is honestly no different. Now, in the footage you're seeing of the first three phases, you're going to notice that the charge shot isn't exactly excelling, but look, in the fourth phase, this is a phase where we don't get a load of chances to attack the boss. So as every other boss, when we do get the chance to attack, we gotta make it count with the super high damage of the charge shot. Werner Werman is pretty basic this time around. It's another boss where it's kind of the same no matter what. The biggest downfall is in the final phase, where the slow fire rate of the charge is even more of a detriment because I can't kill the ghost rats that quickly, and it's just overall not worth it. And I do get a little bit upset sometimes.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie, the charge shot was failing me like crazy. Okay, finally, what's up?
Sadly, Briny Beard follows similar to Werner, where the charge shot isn't that amazing here. I mean, Briny Beard is just a terrible boss, so maybe it's not the weapon's fault here. The Phantom Express was the most difficult point in this challenge so far, and a lot of the challenge was in the first phase, where we are constantly getting spammed by his eyeballs, pumpkins, just everything. It was too much for the charge shot to handle. I tried to use the uncharged shot as much as I could, just to break a lot of the eyes, but it honestly didn't even help that much because I was just dealing so little damage to the main boss. So most of the time, I would leave this phase with just 1 HP, or I would just die trying. And the rest of the phases were pretty easy, but all it took was for me to make one mistake on the final phase.
I'm done with the game! I was just, oh my god, bro!
I beat it eventually though. As most of you know, in these videos, I don't really talk about King Dice that much. And all I want to say is I hate King Dice now. I don't know why I died so many times, but for some reason, the charge was just not doing it for me here. But after many good attempts lost, we did finally win.
Oh my god.
Time for the Devil. The Devil's first phase isn't too bad. I can honestly say that the charge shot is actually good here, especially with the high damage on the EX. Second phase is pretty similar, with the EX being able to hit both eyes for extra damage, which was awesome. In the third phase, we take care of the henchmen and use EXs to handle the bats, which is normally where I have a lot of trouble, but this time it was easy. And with that, the final phase falls like every other attempt. Onto the DLC. Glumstone Giant is first, and honestly the charge isn't bad here. I've actually never used the charge shot in the DLC before, so dare I say it? This was kind of fun. Biggest drawback was the gnomes at the bottom of the screen, but we can just use the uncharged shot to take them all out. Second phase is kind of similar to the first. We can just spam uncharged shots to slowly deal damage and destroy the jumping guys, but I opted for fully charged, well-placed shots just to make it go by a lot quicker and deal with the consequences of all the minions around. And final phase was just same old, same old. I gotta say, the charge did really good on the final phase with its high damage. Mortimer Freeze is a boss I initially thought to be terrible, and I was mostly right. The first phase was surprisingly pretty difficult. I got hit the most with the minion attack, which is generally the easiest, but it's just because the charge shot wasn't good at destroying them unless I used the uncharged form, and I just didn't feel like I wanted to here. The second phase, you would think that the popsicles were a big problem, as the charge shot struggles with multiple targets, but they just didn't get in the way. And if they did, I would either jump over them or just EX to remove them. In the third, this charge shot wasn't really what was dragging me down, it was more of just me messing up and getting hit. So overall, not that bad. Howling Aces is a boss where the charge shot isn't outstanding on, but it wasn't terrible. You would think this boss to be difficult because of the fire hydrants in the first phase, but since this was towards the end of the challenge, I felt really comfortable switching between the charged and uncharged shots. Second phase is just about making sure you time your shots to actually hit the spinning dogs, and it's nothing after that. And don't ask me why, but on the third phase, I found it super easy to shoot the lasers, and that on top of the head tilt method, it was easy. Moonshine Mob. Oh boy. Just kidding! I struggled on this boss for like 5 minutes. The first phase is pretty tough with all the different minions, but I don't know why, I just didn't find it that bad, and it went down super quick if I focused on the boss. With the dancing lady, we do the same as every other time, but again, since there's just high damage on the charge shot and you don't normally get a lot of chances to hit the boss, it goes down like nothing. On the transition to the third phase, we deal a ton of early damage with some EXs and good timed shots, and then we just focus on the nose to destroy it. The dust balls go down in one hit, so that was no challenge, and after the fake knockout, it may as well have been the real one. At long last, we have finally made it to the final boss of the game. This whole playthrough has been a mix of the charge shot being insane and pretty terrible, so hopefully this boss ends up in the insane column. Chef Saltbaker gave me a great run for my money. It was awful. And on top of all that, I just felt like I was tickling the boss with each attack. That was until I just had a god attempt. I don't know why, but this just went really well. Very similar to the Moonshine Mob. I didn't change anything. I just started decimating the boss. Second phase was easy because we can hit all 4 of the pepper shakers, and everyone knows how the third phase is. On the last phase, as long as we focus on hitting our shots and staying alive, before I knew it, the challenge was over. Overall, this challenge wasn't terrible. It was actually only 2.5 hours of footage, which I believe is the fastest we've ever 300%ed the game. But for some reason, I just can't say that this shot is good. I'm only going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. Please don't get mad at me. Thank you all so much for watching, and please go down and like and subscribe. I lied earlier when I said it was the last time, but seriously, it means the world to me if you guys go down, like, subscribe, and enjoy the video. Thank you all so much, and goodbye.